Before we begin, if you enjoy stories of second chances, courage against impossible odds, and love that heals the deepest wounds, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more cinematic storytelling every week. Now, let's step into Montana territory, winter of 1884, where a seamstress and a widowed rancher are about to collide in the most unexpected way. Some lies are born from desperation. Others are born from hope. The best ones are born from both. Daniel Ashford stood before the mirror in his bedroom, adjusting his collar for the third time. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Below, he could hear the murmur of guests arriving, carriages on gravel. Polite laughter, the careful orchestration of a life he no longer wanted. In the top drawer of his dresser, hidden beneath cufflinks and tie pins, lay a small velvet box. He opened it. Catherine's wedding ring gleamed in the afternoon light, simple gold worn smooth by 3 years of love before death took her. "Forgive me," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm not strong enough to keep fighting them." 60 miles away, Clara Brennan clutched a crumpled letter as the stagecoach rattled across frozen prairie. Her carpetbag sat at her feet, containing everything she owned: 2 dresses, a sewing kit, her mother's prayer book, and 6 years of running. She reread the letter for the 20th time. Seamstress needed. Room and board. Ashford Estate, Montana Territory. No references required, no references required. Those were the words that mattered. Because Clara Brennan couldn't provide references without revealing who she really was, the driver called back, "Ashford Place, miss. Big white house ahead." "Can't miss it." Clara looked up. Through the dusty window, she saw a mansion rising from the plains like a cathedral. Too grand. Too elegant. Wrong, but she had nowhere else to go. 2 desperate people. 1 terrible misunderstanding. And a lie that would change everything. The house was even more intimidating up close. 3 stories of whitewashed perfection, wraparound porches catching the winter sun. Windows reflecting sky and snow like mirrors. Gardens stretched in geometric precision despite the cold season, evidence of wealth that could make things grow even when nature said otherwise. Clara's worn boots crunched on gravel as she approached. Through the tall windows, she glimpsed movement, people in fine clothes, the glint of crystal, the orchestrated elegance of society at play. She'd made a mistake. This wasn't a ranch household needing a seamstress. This was something else entirely. "You're late," the voice came from the porch. A woman in severe black descended the stairs with military precision. 50 years old, iron-gray hair, eyes that assessed Clara like livestock at auction. The stage was delayed at, no excuses. Mrs. Ashford is very particular about punctuality. The woman's gaze swept Clara's threadbare traveling dress. "You're the seamstress, I presume?" "Yes, ma'am." "Clara Brennan. I received a letter about, I'm Mrs. Carson, head housekeeper. Follow me. There's a gathering this afternoon and you'll need to be presentable for staff service." Clara's stomach dropped. "I thought I was here for sewing work, not, you are. But today is special. Mrs. Ashford's son is announcing his engagement." Mrs. Carson's expression flickered with something Clara couldn't identify. Disapproval, maybe. Or pity. "Now come. We've wasted enough time." Inside was a world Clara had only glimpsed through wealthy clients' windows. Crystal chandeliers, oil paintings in gilt frames, the scent of lemon polish and hothouse flowers. Her boots suddenly seemed impossibly loud on the gleaming floors. Mrs. Carson led her up a narrow servant staircase to a small third-floor room. Washington changed into something without visible stains. 10 minutes, the door clicked shut. Clara stood in the tiny space, barely larger than a closet, and tried to steady her breathing. Through the small window, she could see more carriages arriving. Women in silk dresses the colors of sunset. Men in tailored suits that cost more than Clara earned in a year. she opened her carpetbag with shaking hands. One spare dress, nearly identical to the one she wore. No appropriate attire for whatever was happening downstairs. This was wrong. All of it. But she had $12 to her name and no return ticket to Boston. She washed quickly, changed, and tried to tame her dark hair into something resembling respectability. The mirror showed a pale face, two large eyes, the kind of plainness that made her invisible in crowds, perfect for a seamstress. Terrible for whatever she was about to walk into, Mrs. Carson returned without knocking. Adequate. Now listen carefully. You're to wait in the back hallway during the reception. Out of sight unless called. If anyone addresses you, keep answers brief and respectful. Do not speak unless spoken to. Clear? Yes, ma'am, but I still don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to follow instructions. They descended the grand staircase this time. Clara's hand barely touched the polished banister as voices drifted from deeper in the house. Laughter. The delicate clink of crystal. The sound of people who'd never questioned their place in the world. Mrs. Carson positioned her in a narrow corridor off the main entrance hall. Wait here. Don't move. Then Clara was alone with the muffled celebration in her racing heart. Through the archway ahead, she caught glimpses of the gathering. Women in jewel-toned silks. Men with carefully groomed beards. Everyone moving with the easy confidence of those born wealthy. Servants glided through carrying champagne on silver trays, absolutely magnificent, don't you think? About time. 3 years is far too long for a man of his position to remain unmarried, such a tragedy about Catherine. But this girl is much more suitable. Breeding matters. Clara pressed herself against the wall, trying to become invisible. She pieced together fragments of conversation. Wealthy son. Previous tragedy. New engagement to restore order. The kind of arranged match that involved lawyers and land deeds. Footsteps in the main hall made her freeze, told mother this was unnecessary. The voice was male. Deep, edged with frustration. A circus. That's what this is, Daniel, please. Female, strained. It's tradition. People expect a performance. I'm aware. The footsteps stopped near Clara's hiding spot. Is the seamstress here yet? I wanted to check the fit on my dress one more time before. Oh, there. Clara's stomach dropped to her feet. The woman, mid-50s, elegant in deep blue silk, was looking directly at her. Yes? Clara managed, voice barely above a whisper, don't be shy, dear. Come here, please. Every instinct screamed at Clara to run. But she'd learned long ago that running only made things worse. She stepped forward into the light, acutely aware of every patch in her dress. Every scuff on her boots. The woman's expression shifted. Oh. You're not, she trailed off, confusion spreading across her face. I'm the seamstress, ma'am. Clara Brennan. I received your letter about alterations work. Alterations. The woman blinked. I didn't send any letter. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Clara's feet, but the advertisement in the Boston paper, it had your name, this address, mother. A man stepped into view and Clara's prepared explanations died in her throat. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of shoulders that came from actual work, not tailored padding. Dark hair, sun-weathered skin, eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore his formal suit like armor he didn't quite trust. The collar slightly askew as if he'd been tugging at it. Those gray eyes swept over Clara once, sharp and assessing. Who's this? He asked his mother. I'm not entirely sure. She claims she's here for seamstress work, but I never hired. The Ashford estate, Clara interrupted, desperation making her brave. The letter was signed Mrs. G. Ashford. I have it in my bag upstairs. I can show you. Understanding dawned on the older woman's face. Grace. Oh, for heaven's sake, who's Grace? The man, Daniel, Clara remembered. asked, "Your brother's wife. She must have placed an advertisement without consulting me." The woman pressed fingers to her temple. "She's been complaining about the shortage of skilled help. But to hire someone and send them here today of all days, ma'am, I'm so sorry." Clara's face burned. "I didn't know." "I'll leave immediately, Evelyn. Is something wrong?" A new voice. This one honey-sweet and perfectly projected. A young woman glided into view, blonde and beautiful in a dress that probably cost more than Clara's entire life. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were calculating. This, Clara understood immediately, was the bride-to-be. "Nothing's wrong, Vivian," Mrs. Ashford, Evelyn, said quickly. "Just a small misunderstanding with the help." Vivian's gaze slid over Clara like oil on water. "How curious. I didn't realize we were interviewing staff during the reception." Other guests were drifting closer now, drawn by the disruption. Clara could feel their eyes on her worn dress, her plain face, her complete lack of belonging. "She's not," Evelyn started. "I apologize for the intrusion," Clara cut in, fighting to keep her voice level. "There was a miscommunication about the position." "I'll leave now." A miscommunication. Vivian's smile sharpened. "How unfortunate. All the way from where did you say?" "Boston, Boston. Such a long journey for a misunderstanding." Vivian turned to the gathering crowd with practiced grace. "Everyone, it seems we have an unexpected guest, a seamstress from Boston who's traveled all this way for a position that doesn't exist." Polite laughter rippled through the room. Not cruel exactly, but not kind either. The sound of people entertained by someone else's misfortune. Clara's hands clenched at her sides. She'd endured mockery before, mill girls who called her too proud for her station, boarding house residents who whispered about her dead mother. She'd survived by keeping her head down and her mouth shut, but this. Standing in this beautiful room, surrounded by beautiful people who saw her as nothing more than an amusing mistake. This hurt in a way she hadn't expected. "Well," Vivian continued, her voice carrying effortlessly, "I suppose we should be grateful she's only a seamstress and not someone claiming to be something more important." Can you imagine? A strange woman arriving at an engagement party, hoping to, "That's enough." Daniel's voice cut through the room like a blade. The laughter died. Vivian's smile froze. "Darling, I know what you were doing." "And I said, that's enough." Silence settled over the gathering, thick and uncomfortable. Clara wanted to disappear into the floorboards. "Mrs. Ashford," Daniel said, turning to his mother, "perhaps we should, the engagement's off." "Vivian." The words dropped like stones into still water. Vivian's face went white. "What? The engagement? The arrangement? Whatever you want to call it." Daniel's expression was unreadable. "It's finished." Someone gasped. Evelyn swayed slightly. Vivian's mouth opened and closed without sound. "You can't," Vivian finally managed. "We have an agreement. Our families had an agreement." Past tense. Daniel turned slightly, and his storm-gray eyes found Clara's. "I'm already married." The room exploded, voices rose in shock and confusion. Evelyn gripped her son's arm hard enough to leave marks. Vivian's perfect composure shattered into fury and tears, and Clara stood frozen, understanding that somehow, impossibly, she'd just become the center of a disaster she didn't create and couldn't escape. Daniel crossed the space between them in 3 strides. Up close, he was even more imposing, broad and solid, radiating controlled tension. He looked down at Clara with an expression she couldn't decipher. "What's your name?" he asked quietly, just for her. "Clara." "Clara Brennan." "Miss Brennan, I apologize for what I'm about to do." His voice was low, urgent. "But I need you to trust me for the next 5 minutes." "Can you do that?" Trust him? She didn't even know him. But the alternative was standing here while these people tore her apart for entertainment. While Vivian's fury found a new target. While Mrs. Ashford's disappointment turned to blame, Clara met Daniel Ashford's eyes and saw something unexpected there. Not pity. Not amusement. Desperation. She nodded once. Daniel turned back to the crowd, keeping himself between Clara and their stares. Clara and I were married 6 months ago. Quietly, in Boston. That's impossible, Evelyn breathed. You were here 6 months ago. You never went to. I sent Thomas as my proxy. Legal and binding. Daniel's voice never wavered. We kept it private because she wanted to finish her apprenticeship before moving west. I respected that. The lies flowed smooth as river water. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Vivian found her voice, shrill with rage. This is absurd. You expect us to believe that you secretly married some common seamstress without telling anyone? Without your mother's knowledge. I'm 35 years old. Vivian. I don't require my mother's permission to marry, but you require mine to break our engagement. Vivian's face flushed crimson. My father will hear about this. Your business partners will, do whatever they choose. Daniel's jaw tightened. The marriage stands. The engagement doesn't. I'm sorry. He didn't sound sorry. He sounded like a man who'd finally made a decision he should have made months ago. Evelyn's fingers dug into her son's arm. Daniel, this is madness. You can't possibly. It's done, Mother. He looked at Clara again, something apologetic in his eyes. My wife is here now. That's what matters. The word wife sent ice through Clara's veins. What was she supposed to do? Confirm the lie? Deny it and expose him? Run? She couldn't run. There was nowhere to go. No money for a stage ticket back east. No job waiting. No home. Vivian was crying now, genuine tears cutting through powder and rouge. You'll regret this, Daniel Ashford. My father will pull his investment from every venture then he'll pull it. I'll survive. Daniel's voice softened slightly. You deserve better than a marriage of convenience, Vivian. We both do. I loved you. The words burst out of her, raw and real. For the first time, Daniel's certainty wavered. No. You loved what I represented. There's a difference. Vivian stared at him like she'd never seen him before. Then she turned on her heel and fled, silk skirts hissing across the polished floor. Her mother, Clara hadn't even noticed her before, rushed after her, throwing venomous looks over her shoulder. Other guests began moving toward the door. Some quickly, embarrassed. Others slowly, still hoping for more drama to unfold. Evelyn released her son's arm and stepped back. This isn't over, she said quietly. When they're gone, you and I are going to have a very serious conversation. She swept away without acknowledging Clara's existence. Within minutes, the elegant room was empty except for Clara, Daniel, and the debris of celebration. Abandoned champagne glasses. Half-eaten canapes. Flower arrangements that suddenly seemed absurd. Clara became aware that she was shaking. Daniel ran a hand through his dark hair, disheveling it further. Hell, what did you just do? Clara's voice came out thin and high, bought us both some time. He turned to face her fully. And possibly destroyed several important business relationships. But mostly bought time. Time for what? To figure out what happens next. He studied her with those unsettling gray eyes. You're really here for seamstress work? That wasn't part of some plan. The question sparked something hot in Clara's chest. A plan? You think I wanted this? To be humiliated in front of, no. Daniel's expression softened. No, I don't think that. I'm sorry. Today has been. He trailed off. Looking around the empty room. Complicated. Clara's legs felt weak. She reached for the wall to steady herself. I need to leave. I need to find somewhere to. You can't leave. Excuse me, if you leave now, everyone will know I lied. Daniel's jaw set. Vivian's father controls half the water rights in this territory. He'll use this to destroy me out of spite, which means destroying about 40 families who depend on my ranch for their livelihood. That's not my problem. I'm making it your problem. He held up a hand before she could protest. Temporarily. Just hear me out, Clara wanted to scream. Or cry. Or both. I'm listening. Stay for 1 year. Play the role of my wife in public. In private, we'll live separate lives. After a year, we'll quietly divorce. You'll cite irreconcilable differences, take a generous settlement, and go wherever you want with enough money to start fresh. The proposal was so absurd that Clara almost laughed. You're insane, probably. Daniel crossed his arms. But I'm also desperate. And unless I'm very wrong, so are you. He wasn't wrong. Clara hated that he wasn't wrong. I came here for honest work, she said quietly. Not to be part of some elaborate deception, I know. And I wouldn't ask if there was any other option. Daniel's voice lowered. But there isn't. Vivian and I have been locked in this arrangement for 8 months. Our families have been planning it for 2 years. The only thing that would make them back off is exactly what I just gave them, a legal barrier they can't negotiate around. You don't even know me, no. But I know Vivian would have made both our lives miserable. His eyes held hers. And I know you deserve better than being mocked by people who think they're superior because they were born wealthy. Clara looked down at her worn hands. 1 year, 1 year. Room, board, new clothes so you'll fit the part. $500 when it's over, $500. Clara's mind reeled. That was more money than she'd see in 5 years of honest work. It was also a lie. A performance. Everything she'd been taught to despise. Why should I trust you? She asked. You just lied to a room full of people without blinking. You shouldn't trust me. You should make me put it in writing. Daniel moved to a writing desk near the window, pulled out paper and pen. A contract. Specific terms. I'll have my lawyer witness it tomorrow. He was serious. Actually serious. Clara watched him write, her thoughts spinning. 1 year of pretending. 1 year of living in this impossible house, wearing silk dresses, playing a part. 1 year of lying to everyone, but 1 year that would end with freedom she'd never imagined possible. What if people find out the truth? She asked. They won't. As far as anyone knows, we met when I traveled to Boston on business. You're educated enough to pass as genteel, I can hear it in your speech. We'll say your family fell on hard times, which explains the circumstances. Not uncommon these days, and your mother, Daniel's hand paused on the paper. My mother will be furious. But she'll adapt. She always does. He finished writing and held out the paper. Clara approached slowly, reading over his shoulder. The terms were clear. 1 year. Public appearance of marriage. Private separation. No expectations of. She felt her face heat as she read the carefully worded clause about physical relations. None required, at the bottom. A promise, $500 upon completion of the arrangement or dissolution of the agreement, whichever comes first. I need to add something, Clara said quietly. Daniel handed her the pen. With careful script, she wrote, no romantic attachment. This is a business arrangement only. Daniel read it and nodded. Agreed, they both signed. The ink gleamed wet and dark against the cream paper. So, Daniel said after a moment, Mrs. Ashford, should we discuss the details of our elaborate fabricated courtship, Mrs. Ashford? The name sat wrong in Clara's mouth, like wearing someone else's dress. I don't know anything about you. How am I supposed to convince people we're married? I don't know anything about you either. So we're even. Daniel moved to the window, looking out over the emptying drive. "We'll have to learn quickly, this is never going to work, it has to." He turned back to her, and for the first time, Clara saw past the confidence and desperation to something else. Exhaustion. "Because the alternative is watching everything my father built get torn apart by people who only care about power and position." There was a story there. A weight behind his words that Clara recognized because she carried something similar. Loss. "The burden of expectations inherited from the dead. Tell me one thing that's true," she said. "About why you really did this." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm tired of being treated like a prize bull at auction. And because Vivian didn't deserve to be humiliated by the truth, which is that I would never love her. This way, she's the injured party. She'll have sympathy and suitors within a month." It was honest. "Surprisingly so." "Your turn," Daniel said. "Why did you really come west?" Clara looked down at her worn hands. "Because there was nothing left for me back east. No family, no prospects. Just debts and bad memories in the same small rooms getting smaller every day, running away, then, starting over," Clara corrected. "There's a difference." Daniel's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. "Fair enough." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mrs. Carson appeared in the archway, her face carefully blank. "Mr. Ashford, your mother would like to speak with you in the study." "I'm sure she would." Daniel straightened his jacket. "Tell her I'll be there shortly." Mrs. Carson's eyes flicked to Clara, then away. "And the young lady, my wife will need the east bedroom prepared. Fresh linens, a bath drawn, whatever she requires." The words dropped like stones. Mrs. Carson's composure cracked for just a second, shock flickering across her features before she smoothed it away. "Of course, sir. I'll see to it immediately." She disappeared, and Clara and Daniel stood in the aftermath of what they'd just set in motion. The contract lay on the desk between them, still drying. "The east bedroom is on the second floor," Daniel said. "My room is on the west side. There's a sitting room between them. We'll maintain separate spaces." "Good, I'll have some appropriate clothes brought up. My sister-in-law is about your size. She won't mind lending a few things until we can have a wardrobe made. I can make my own clothes. I'm a seamstress, remember, right?" Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "This is going to take some adjustment. For both of us." He met her eyes, and Clara saw the same uncertainty she felt reflected back. Two people who just bound themselves together with nothing but lies and desperation. "1 year," Daniel said quietly. "1 year," Clara echoed. Then he left to face his mother's wrath, and Clara was alone in the beautiful, terrible room where her carefully planned future had shattered and reformed into something she couldn't yet comprehend. She walked to the window and looked out over the ranch, the endless plains, the distant mountains, the big sky that seemed to swallow everything. Boston was 2,000 miles away. Her old life was gone, and in its place was a lie she'd agreed to live, a man she didn't know, and a year that would change everything. Clara pressed her forehead against the cool glass and tried not to think about all the ways this could fall apart. The east bedroom was 3 times the size of any room Clara had ever occupied. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in cream linens that looked impossibly soft. Heavy curtains framed windows overlooking the gardens. A writing desk sat in one corner, a wardrobe in another. And a private washroom, an actual washroom with running water, connected through a carved door. Clara stood in the center of it all and felt like an imposter. Mrs. Carson had drawn the bath with brisk efficiency and vanished without a word, leaving behind towels and a bar of lavender soap that probably cost more than Clara's stage fare. The silence after she left was profound, broken only by distant sounds of carriages departing as the ruined engagement party finally dissolved. Clara sank onto the edge of the bed. The mattress gave beneath her weight, soft and yielding. In the boarding house, she'd slept on a cot that creaked with every breath. This felt obscene, she pulled the contract from her pocket and read it again, searching for the trap she'd surely missed. But the terms remained clear, clinical even. A business arrangement with defined parameters and a clean exit, no romantic attachment. She'd added that line herself. And Daniel hadn't hesitated to agree, so why did it sit heavy in her chest like a stone? The days developed a rhythm. Mornings, Clara took breakfast alone while Daniel rode out to manage the ranch. Mid-morning, she endured lessons with Evelyn on everything from proper table settings to the complex social hierarchies of Montana Territory. Afternoons were her own, usually spent reading in the library or walking the gardens. Evenings meant dinner with the family, still tense, still careful, but slightly less hostile as days passed. She and Daniel existed in careful parallel. Polite at meals. Cordial when others were present. But alone, they maintained the distance the contract required. He slept in the west bedroom. She slept in the east. The sitting room between them might as well have been a canyon. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt hollow. 10 days after her arrival, Clara found herself alone in the library. The room was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with leather-bound volumes, a massive fireplace. Windows overlooking the snow-dusted plains. She'd been reading Austen when her fingers brushed something wedged behind a row of books, a journal. Small, leather-bound, the pages yellowed with age. Clara opened it. The handwriting inside was elegant, feminine, Catherine Ashford. January 1881, Clara's heart stuttered. Daniel's first wife, she knew she shouldn't read it. This was private. Sacred, even. But her fingers turned pages as if compelled. January 14th, Daniel surprised me with roses today, even though it's winter. He said he'd ride 20 miles to the hothouse just to see me smile. I don't deserve him. February 3rd, Harrison Blackwell came to call again. He keeps pushing for Daniel to consider strategic partnerships. The way he looks at me makes my skin crawl. March 21st, I'm pregnant. Daniel is overjoyed. I'm terrified. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I fail him like I've failed everyone else? Clara's hands trembled. She flipped ahead, looking for something. She didn't know what. October 8th, the accident wasn't an accident. I know it wasn't. The wheel was tampered with. Harrison wanted this. He wanted the baby gone so Daniel would be free for Vivian. October 9th, lost the baby. Lost everything. The doctor says I'll recover physically, but how do you recover from knowing someone wanted your child dead? October 12th, Harrison came to the house. Offered condolences with that snake smile. Said, unfortunate timing, and perhaps this was meant to be. I wanted to scream at him, but what proof do I have? Just instinct. Just knowing. October 14th, I can't live with this. Can't live knowing what he did and being powerless to stop him. Can't live watching Daniel's dreams die because of my weakness. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The journal ended there. The final entry dated October 14th, 1881, Clara sat frozen, the book trembling in her hands. Not childbirth. Not natural causes. Catherine had taken her own life after Harrison Blackwell orchestrated the death of her child, and Daniel knew. Somehow, he knew. Find something interesting, Clara spun. Grace Ashford stood in the doorway. Daniel's sister-in-law, with her warm brown hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. I didn't mean to pry, Catherine's journal. Grace moved closer. I wondered if it was still here. Daniel thought he'd burned them all. You knew about this? Clara's voice was barely a whisper, I suspected. Grace sat in the chair across from Clara. Catherine and I were friends. Close friends. In those final weeks, she kept saying things that didn't make sense. About Harrison. About feeling trapped. I thought it was grief from losing the baby, but now. She paused. Now I think she knew something terrible and couldn't prove it, the accident. She wrote that it wasn't an accident. I know. I've been trying to find evidence for 3 years. Grace's expression hardened. Harrison Blackwell is one of the most powerful men in Montana Territory. He owns banks, railroads, politicians. Accusing him without proof would be suicide. Does Daniel know? About the journal, I don't know what Daniel knows. He won't talk about it. Grace leaned forward. But I know he's been carrying guilt since Catherine died. And I know that guilt is why he agreed to marry Vivian, some twisted idea that he could prevent Harrison from hurting anyone else by keeping him close. Clara's mind reeled. That's why he needed to escape the engagement. Because he realized that marrying Vivian would mean living with his wife's killer forever. Yes. Grace studied Clara. I don't know what arrangement you and Daniel really have. I'm not asking. But I need you to understand, my brother-in-law is drowning in guilt over something that wasn't his fault. And you might be the only person who can pull him back to shore. That night, a blizzard descended on Montana. Wind howled around the house, rattling shutters and making the old wood groan. Snow fell in sheets, turning the world outside into a white void. Clara tried to read, but the words blurred together. She kept seeing Catherine's handwriting. I can't live with this. Around midnight, she heard it. A cry from the other side of the sitting room. Wordless. Anguished, Clara was moving before she thought about it. Crossing the sitting room, pushing open Daniel's door, he was tangled in sheets, head thrashing, caught in some nightmare. No, I can't, the blood, Catherine, please, Daniel. Clara touched his shoulder gently. Wake up. You're dreaming. His eyes flew open, wild and unseeing for a moment. Then they focused on her, and something cracked in his expression. Clara. He sat up, breathing hard. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you, you didn't. She sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain distance. Bad dream, the worst kind. The kind based on memory. Daniel ran shaking hands through his hair. October 14th, 3 years ago. Coming home and finding Catherine, his voice broke. There was so much blood, Clara's chest ached. Grace told me. About the journal, Daniel went very still. She had no right, she's trying to help. We both are. Clara met his eyes. You've been carrying this alone for too long, what else am I supposed to do? I know Harrison caused that accident. I know it in my bones. But I have no proof. No witnesses. Just a dead wife and a guilty conscience. His hands clenched into fists. I couldn't save her. I couldn't protect our child. And I can't make the bastard who killed them pay. Tell me what happened. All of it, and he did. The words poured out like a dam breaking, how Catherine had become increasingly paranoid in those final weeks. How she'd mentioned accidents that seemed orchestrated. How Daniel had dismissed it as pregnancy anxiety until he found her in the bath, wrist slit, a note that said only I'm sorry. The doctor called it postpartum melancholia, Daniel said, voice hollow. Everyone accepted that. It was easier than the truth, which is, that Harrison Blackwell wanted me free to marry Vivian and her railroad fortune. Catherine and the baby were obstacles. So he removed them. Daniel looked at Clara, his eyes devastated. And I let him get away with it because I was too much of a coward to fight someone that powerful. Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, Clara and Daniel sat in the lamplight. And for the first time since this charade began, there was something real between them. Clara didn't offer empty platitudes. Didn't try to convince him it wasn't his fault. She simply stayed. Sat beside him. Let him talk until the words ran out. Eventually, the nightmare receded. The tension in Daniel's shoulders eased slightly. He looked at her with something like wonder. "Why are you still here?" he asked quietly. "Where else would I go? I mean here. In this room." "You could have gone back to bed," Clara considered the question. "Because no one should be alone with memories like that, even if we have a contract that says no emotional attachment, especially then." Something shifted in Daniel's expression. He reached for her hand, hesitated, then took it anyway. His palm was warm, calloused from work, completely enveloping hers. Neither of them spoke. Outside, snow fell in silent sheets. Inside, two people who'd promised to keep their distance closed the gap just a little. Then Daniel released her hand gently. "You should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be difficult." "Why?" "My mother is hosting a tea. Half the women in the territory will be there to inspect you." Clara's stomach nodded. "Wonderful, you'll be fine. You've handled everything else." His mouth quirked slightly. "And if anyone gives you trouble, just remember, you've survived worse than wealthy women with too much time and too little kindness." Clara stood, moving toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. "Daniel?" "Yes." Catherine's journal mentioned Harrison visiting after the accident. "Offering condolences." "He did." "Sanctimonious bastard." "Did he say anything specific?" "Anything that might." "No. Just the usual platitudes about God's will and tragic timing." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because guilty men often can't resist gloating, even subtly." Clara met his eyes. "If we're going to fight him, we need to know his weaknesses. And arrogance is always a weakness. You didn't think I'd let you face this alone, did you?" Clara smiled slightly. 1 year, remember? Might as well make it count for something." The tea was exactly as terrible as Clara had anticipated. Evelyn's morning room was filled with women in elegant day dresses, each one studying Clara like a specimen under glass. "So you're the mysterious bride," Mrs. Patterson said, false sweetness dripping from every word. "We were all quite shocked by yesterday's announcement." "I imagine you were," Clara replied evenly. "And you met Daniel in Boston?" Miss Thornhill leaned forward. "How extraordinary. What drew you to him?" The question was loaded with implication. What could possibly draw a common seamstress to a wealthy rancher except his money? Clara met her eyes. "His honesty. He spoke to me like a person, not a transaction." Mrs. Vanderburg made a small approving sound. Evelyn's expression flickered with something Clara couldn't quite read. "How refreshing," Mrs. Cleary said. "Vivian always seemed so calculating about the whole thing." "No romance at all, Clara," Evelyn warned. "Well, it's true. The poor girl was more interested in the ranch than the man." Mrs. Cleary turned to Clara. "You must tell us everything. How did he propose?" Here it was. The moment where Clara had to sell the lie completely or watch it crumble. She thought about Catherine's journal. About Daniel's nightmare. About a man so trapped by guilt and obligation that he'd claim a stranger as his wife rather than marry into the family of his dead wife's killer. "We were walking along the river," Clara began, letting the fiction unspool. "It was evening. He'd been quiet for most of the walk. Then he stopped and said he had something important to ask me." She paused, remembering the date she'd given. April 14th. "The day Catherine died, he told me he'd loved someone once and lost her. That he never thought he'd feel anything real again." Clara's voice dropped. "But being with me reminded him what it felt like to be honest. To be seen. He said he couldn't offer me passion or poetry, but he could offer me respect. Partnership. A life where I'd never have to pretend to be less than I was." The room had gone quiet. Even Evelyn was listening with an expression Clara couldn't decipher. "So I said yes." Clara looked down at her hands. "Not for his money or his name. But because after years of being invisible, someone finally saw me. It was close enough to the truth that it hurt. The fiction wrapped around real things. Real loneliness. Real desperation. Real need for something honest in a world full of arrangements and lies. Mrs. Patterson pressed a handkerchief to her eyes. How beautiful. Miss Thornhill looked skeptical but said nothing. Evelyn's expression was unreadable, but her hands were clenched tight around her teacup. Later, after the ladies departed, Evelyn gestured for Clara to remain. That was well done, she said quietly. I only told them what they wanted to hear. You told them a story they could believe. Evelyn poured fresh tea. There's a difference. Clara accepted the cup. You're testing me. At dinner, here, everywhere. Trying to find the crack, of course I am. You're a stranger who's inserted herself into my family under questionable circumstances. Evelyn's eyes were sharp. What did you expect? Nothing less, but I'm also beginning to understand why Daniel chose you. Evelyn paused. You made that story about Catherine without saying her name. That took insight. Clara set down her cup carefully. I don't want to cause him more pain. Whatever this arrangement is, it's not meant to hurt him. Intentions don't prevent harm. Evelyn's voice was soft. But I appreciate the thought. She stood, smoothing her skirts. You'll need proper clothes. I've sent for the dressmaker from town. She'll be here tomorrow to take measurements. I can make my own. Mrs. Ashford doesn't sew her own dresses. The title came out firm. Final. That's the role you agreed to play. Play it well. 3 weeks passed. Clara learned the rhythms of the house, the unspoken rules of frontier society, the careful dance of maintaining appearances. She received callers with Evelyn. Attended church on Sundays. Smiled and nodded and played the part of Daniel Ashford's devoted wife, but alone, in the spaces between performance, Clara found herself returning to Catherine's journal. Reading between the lines. Looking for evidence that might have been overlooked, Daniel caught her in the library one afternoon, surrounded by papers. What are you doing? Clara looked up. Research. Catherine mentioned specific dates in her journal. I've been checking them against your ranch records, the territory newspaper archives, looking for what? A pattern. Proof that Harrison was here more often than he claimed. That he had opportunity. Clara held up a ledger. Look. Catherine wrote about Harrison visiting on September 23rd. Your records show no appointment scheduled. But there's a withdrawal from the ranch account that day, $5,000. Marked miscellaneous expenses. Daniel moved closer, studying the ledger. I don't remember authorizing that, exactly. What if Harrison was paying someone? The wheel wasn't going to tamper with itself. You think there's a paper trail. I think arrogant men get careless. They think they're untouchable. Clara's eyes met his. We just need to find where he slipped. Why are you doing this? Daniel's voice was quiet. The contract doesn't require you to. The contract is just paper. Clara stood. I'm doing this because Catherine deserves justice. And because no one should have that much power over life and death. Daniel looked at her like he was seeing something unexpected. You're remarkable, you know that. Heat crept up Clara's neck. I'm just doing what's right. No. You're doing what's dangerous. He touched her arm gently. Harrison Blackwell is not a man who forgives interference. If he finds out you're investigating, then we'll be careful. Clara, I'm not stopping. She met his eyes. Unless you tell me to. Directly. And even then, I might not listen. A slow smile spread across Daniel's face. Catherine used to say that. Tell me not to do something, and watch me do it anyway. She had good instincts. She did. Daniel's smile faded. And they got her killed. The next afternoon, Clara was walking the perimeter gardens when she saw a rider approaching. A man on a black horse, moving with purpose. He stopped at the front entrance, and Clara recognized him immediately from the engagement party. Harrison Blackwell. She should have gone inside. Should have called for Daniel. Instead, she walked toward the house, arriving just as Harrison was dismounting. "Mr. Blackwell," she said evenly. He turned, and Clara saw the moment he catalogued her, worn clothes replaced by elegant day dress, plain seamstress transformed into ranch mistress. His expression flickered with something dark. "Mrs. Ashford. Or should I say, Miss Brennan?" His smile was all teeth. "I do my research." Clara's blood turned cold. "Clara Brennan from Boston," Harrison continued, pulling a folded paper from his coat. "Formerly Clara Brennan Hartley. Daughter of Benjamin Hartley, the lawyer who tried, and failed, to expose my business practices 5 years ago." He handed her the paper. Clara opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph, herself at 18, standing beside a stern-looking man outside a Boston courthouse. "Your father has been looking for you for 6 years, Harrison said pleasantly. "One telegram, and he'll know exactly where you are. I imagine he'll be quite eager to retrieve his wayward daughter." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand your position." Harrison stepped closer. "You're not Daniel's wife. You're his convenient lie. And I will expose that lie unless you leave. Quietly. Today, and if I don't, then your father drags you back to Boston to finish the marriage you ran from." "I believe the gentleman's name was Marcus Pemberton." Harrison's eyes glittered. "Very wealthy. Very persistent. Very angry that his fiancée vanished." The world tilted beneath Clara's feet. Marcus. God, she'd almost forgotten about Marcus. "You have until tonight." Harrison mounted his horse. "Make the right choice, Miss Hartley." For everyone's sake, he rode away, leaving Clara standing in the cold with her past clutched in trembling hands. She found Daniel in the stables, checking on a mare about to foal. He took one look at her face and straightened immediately. "What happened?" Clara handed him the photograph without speaking. Daniel studied it, his expression darkening. "Who's this?" "My father. Benjamin Hartley." Clara's voice was hollow. "Harrison knows who I am. He knows I've been running. And he's threatening to tell my father where I am unless I leave." "Benjamin Hartley. The lawyer who..." Daniel's eyes widened. "The one who tried to expose Harrison's railroad fraud, the same. Harrison destroyed his reputation. His practice, everything." Clara wrapped her arms around herself. "My father became obsessed with redemption. He arranged a marriage for me, Marcus Pemberton, old money, connections that could restore the Hartley name. I refused. He disowned me. I ran, and Harrison's using that to force you out. There's more." Clara took a shaking breath. "Marcus. He's intense. Possessive. When I disappeared, he became obsessed with finding me. If my father tells him where I am, he'll come for you." Yes, they stood in the dim stable, the weight of Clara's past pressing down on them both. "We'll fight this," Daniel said finally. "We'll. How?" "Harrison has all the power. He has evidence. He has connections. What do we have? Each other." The words hung between them, simple and true and terrifying. "The contract said no emotional attachment," Clara whispered. "I know what the contract said." Daniel moved closer. "But I'm finding it very difficult to care about that right now." His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. "Tell me this is just business and I'll step back." Clara should have said it. Should have maintained the boundary. Should have protected them both from the inevitable complication. Instead, she leaned into his touch. "I can't." "Can't what?" "Can't tell you to stop. Can't pretend this is just business." She met his eyes. "Can't keep lying to myself about what I feel." Daniel's breath caught. "Clara," the stable door burst open. Thomas Ashford, Daniel's brother, stood there with wild eyes. "Daniel, you need to see this." Now, they followed Thomas to the house, where Grace was waiting in the study with a man Clara didn't recognize. Older, weathered, nervous. "This is Dr. Morrison," Grace said. "Catherine's doctor. He has something to tell you." Dr. Morrison twisted his hat in his hands. "I've carried this guilt for 3 years. When I heard about the new investigation, I knew I had to come forward." "What guilt?" Daniel's voice was steel. "The accident report. The one I filed after Mrs. Ashford's miscarriage." Dr. Morrison's voice shook. "Harrison Blackwell paid me $5,000 to falsify it. To say the wheel failure was due to wear and tear. But it wasn't." "How do you know?" "Because I saw the wheel before it was burned. Someone had sawed halfway through the spoke. Just enough to fail under stress." Dr. Morrison met Daniel's eyes. "Mr. Ashford, your wife's accident was attempted murder. And I helped cover it up." The room went silent, then Daniel moved, so fast Clara barely saw it. He had Dr. Morrison by the collar, lifting him against the wall. "You let him get away with killing my wife and child for $5,000. "Daniel, stop." Grace pulled at his arm. "We need him. He's willing to testify." Daniel held for one more second, fury radiating from every muscle. Then he released the doctor, who crumpled. "Why now?" Daniel demanded. "Why tell the truth after 3 years?" "Because I'm dying." Dr. Morrison's voice was hollow. "Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I can't meet my maker with this sin on my soul." Clara stepped forward. "Do you have proof? Documents? Correspondence with Harrison?" "I kept everything. Every letter, every payment record. I told myself it was insurance, but really." Dr. Morrison looked at Daniel. "I think I always knew I'd need to make this right someday." "Then we have him." Thomas's voice was tight with controlled rage. "We finally have that bastard." "Not yet." Clara's mind was racing. "We have proof of the cover-up. But we need proof that Harrison ordered the sabotage. Without that, he'll claim Dr. Morrison is lying for money or revenge." "She's right," Grace said. "We need more, then we get more." Daniel turned to Clara, and she saw something new in his eyes. Not just desperation. Not just anger. Determination. "Whatever it takes, we end this. For Catherine. For us, for us." The words settled in Clara's chest like a promise. Outside, night was falling over Montana. Snow continued to fall, covering everything in white. Tomorrow, Harrison Blackwell would expect Clara to be gone. Instead, they would declare war. That night, they gathered in Daniel's study: Clara, Daniel, Grace, Thomas, and Dr. Morrison. The fire crackled in the hearth, but the room felt cold with the weight of what they were planning. "We need a strategy," Thomas said, spreading papers across Daniel's desk. "Harrison controls too much: the bank, the railroad, half the judiciary. If we move against him without ironclad proof, he'll crush us." "Dr. Morrison's testimony is a start," Grace said. "But Clara's right. We need evidence that Harrison ordered the sabotage directly. There has to be something." Clara paced, mind working through possibilities. Men like Harrison don't do their own dirty work. He would have hired someone. Paid them. There would be records he's had 3 years to destroy, Daniel said grimly. "Maybe. Or maybe he kept them." Clara stopped pacing. "Think about it. Harrison is arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. Why would he destroy evidence when he's certain no one would ever dare look for it?" "She has a point." Thomas leaned forward. "Harrison keeps meticulous financial records. It's how he maintains control over his empire. Every transaction documented. Then we need to get inside his office," Clara said. The room went silent. "That's insane," Grace finally said. "Harrison's office is in his house. The man has armed guards, locked files. A safe that, she stopped. Wait. Vivian, what about her? Daniel asked. Vivian has access to everything in that house. She's Harrison's daughter. He trusts her completely. Grace's eyes lit up. If anyone could get those records, it's her. Vivian hates us, Clara pointed out. Why would she help? Because she hates her father more, Daniel said quietly. I saw it in her eyes at the engagement party. She's been his puppet her entire life. Maybe it's time someone cut the strings. It's too dangerous, Clara said. If Harrison finds out, then we make sure he doesn't. Daniel turned to Thomas. Can you get a message to Vivian? Quietly, I know someone who works in the Blackwell household. A maid. She owes Grace a favor. Grace nodded. I'll write the letter. But Daniel, we need to be prepared for the possibility that Vivian will refuse. Or worse, that she'll tell her father. She won't, Daniel said with certainty. Vivian is many things, but she's not her father. Not yet. 2 days later, as dawn broke over the frozen prairie, a knock came at the kitchen door. Clara answered it to find a cloaked figure standing in the snow. The figure pushed back her hood. Vivian Blackwell's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. I need to speak with Daniel, she said. And with you. Clara led her to the study where Daniel was already awake, poring over ranch ledgers. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Vivian, don't. Vivian held up a hand. Don't be kind. It'll make this harder. She pulled a metal box from beneath her cloak and set it on Daniel's desk with a heavy thud. What is this? Daniel asked. 3 years of my father's private correspondence. Financial records. Contracts. Vivian's voice shook. Everything you need to prove what he did to Catherine. And everything he's done to dozens of others. Clara's heart hammered. Why are you doing this? Vivian looked at her with eyes full of pain. Because I found these documents the week after Catherine died. I was looking for something else in my father's office, and I found a letter. From a man named Cole Stevens. It said, the wheel is fixed as requested. Payment received. No one will trace it back to you. She opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of letters, ledgers, bank statements. I kept them. I told myself it was insurance, but really I was just a coward. I knew what they meant. I knew my father had killed Catherine and her baby. And I did nothing. Tears streamed down Vivian's face. Then I watched him try to do the same thing to you, Miss Brennan. Threatening you with your past. Using people like chess pieces. And I realized if I didn't stop him, I would become him. Daniel stood slowly. Vivian, if he finds out you took these, he'll disown me. Possibly worse. Vivian wiped her eyes. But I can't be his daughter anymore. I can't be the person who stands by while he destroys lives. Clara moved forward and did something that surprised even herself. She embraced Vivian. For a moment, Vivian stood rigid. Then she collapsed into the hug, sobbing. I'm sorry, Vivian gasped. For what I said at the party. For being cruel. I was so angry at you for having what I wanted, not Daniel, but the courage to be yourself. I've never had that. You have it now, Clara said softly. That took more courage than anything. They spent the next day going through the documents. The evidence was damning. Payments to Cole Stevens. The man who'd sabotaged Catherine's carriage. Correspondence discussing removing obstacles to the Ashford-Blackwell merger. Bank records showing Harrison had paid Dr. Morrison, the coroner, and even a territorial judge to ensure no investigation was opened, but there was more. Evidence of fraud, bribery, extortion. Harrison Blackwell's entire empire was built on corruption, and Vivian had handed them the blueprint to dismantle it. This is enough, Thomas said, looking up from a ledger. More than enough. We take this to the territorial prosecutor, and Harrison is finished. No, Clara said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. If we go to the prosecutor, Harrison will use his influence to suppress it. We need to make this public. Force him to face judgment in front of everyone. How? Grace asked. Clara thought of the women at Evelyn's tea, the ranchers who came to the house, the entire social structure that ran on reputation and scandal. We call a public meeting. Invite everyone, ranchers, businessmen, families. We present the evidence in front of the whole territory. That's bold, Daniel said. And dangerous. Harrison could have us killed before we make it to the meeting, then we make sure he doesn't see it coming. Clara turned to Vivian. Does your father know you're here? No. He thinks I'm visiting my aunt in Helena. I have 3 days before he expects me back. Then we have 3 days to organize this. Clara's mind was racing. Daniel, can you gather the ranchers? The ones who've suffered under Harrison's control, easily. Half of them would ride through hell to see him brought down. Grace, Thomas, we need someone with legal authority present. A judge who isn't on Harrison's payroll, Judge Morrison in Silver Creek, Thomas said. He's honest. Retired from the territorial bench but still respected. He'll come if we ask, then we ask. Clara looked at each of them. 3 days. We have 3 days to bring down a tyrant, but that night, as Clara prepared for bed, a different kind of reckoning came. She was standing at her window, looking out over the snow-covered grounds, when she heard hoofbeats. A single rider, approaching fast. She watched as he dismounted at the front entrance, a man in expensive traveling clothes, tall and broad-shouldered. Even from a distance, Clara recognized him, Marcus Pemberton. Her former fiancé. Her blood turned to ice. She heard the front door open, voices in the entrance hall. Mrs. Carson's protest. Then footsteps on the stairs, heading toward the family wing. Clara grabbed her wrapper and ran to the sitting room just as someone pounded on Daniel's door. Ashford. I know you're in there. Open this door before I break it down. Daniel emerged from his room, half-dressed. Face hard. He saw Clara and positioned himself between her and the door. Who are you? He demanded. Marcus Pemberton. I'm here for my fiancé. You must be mistaken. There's no one here by that name. Don't play games with me. Marcus's voice was cold with fury. Clara Brennan Hartley. She's here. Harrison Blackwell was kind enough to inform her father of her whereabouts, and her father informed me. Daniel's jaw tightened. Miss Hartley is Mrs. Ashford now. She's my wife, a convenient lie. Blackwell told me all about your little arrangement. The door handle rattled. Now open this door, or I'll have the sheriff remove you from your own house. Let him in, Clara said quietly. Daniel turned to her. Clara, he's not going to leave. And I'm done running. Daniel studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. He opened the door. Marcus Pemberton stepped into the sitting room, and Clara was struck by how little he'd changed. Still handsome in that cold, aristocratic way. Still radiating the entitled confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything. His eyes found Clara and something possessive flickered in them. There you are. Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you? 6 years, Clara said evenly. The same amount of time I've been trying to make sure you never found me. Don't be dramatic. Your father explained everything. You were young, confused, frightened by the responsibility of marriage. But that's all behind us now. Marcus moved toward her. I've come to take you home. Daniel stepped between them. She just told you she doesn't want to go, and who are you to stop me? Her pretend husband. Marcus's smile was cruel. I know all about your arrangement. The fake marriage. The contract. You needed a convenient lie, and she needed money. It's pathetic, really. Believe what you want, Daniel said. But she's not leaving, she doesn't have a choice. Her father has legal guardianship. I'm 24 years old, Clara interrupted. Well past the age of majority. My father has no legal claim on me. But I do. Marcus pulled a document from his coat. You signed a marriage contract, Clara. In the state of Massachusetts, that contract is binding. You belong to me. Clara's vision swam. She remembered that day, 18 years old, her father's study, Marcus smiling as he assured her it was just a formality. She'd been too naive to understand what she was signing. That contract is worthless if she's already married, Daniel said, but she's not married. Not really. Marcus's eyes glittered. Prove it. Show me the marriage certificate. Show me evidence that this is anything more than a business arrangement. Silence fell across the room. Because Marcus was right. They had a contract. But no legal marriage. No certificate. No witnesses except the people who knew the truth. I thought so. Marcus turned to Clara. Pack your things. We leave in the morning. No, the word came out strong, clear. Clara stepped around Daniel to face Marcus directly. I'm not going with you. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Clara, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You want to marry me because my father promised you would. Because you see me as property you paid for. But I'm not property. I'm not a contract. I'm a person, and I'm choosing to stay here, with him. Marcus looked at Daniel with contempt. A widower playing pretend with a seamstress. What kind of life is that? A free one, Clara said. Which is more than I'd have with you. Marcus's expression darkened. Your father will cut you off completely. No inheritance. No family. Nothing. I already have nothing from him. He made sure of that 6 years ago. Then you're a fool. Marcus moved to the door. But I'm not giving up. That contract is legal, and I will enforce it. You have until tomorrow morning to come to your senses. He left, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Daniel turned to Clara. We need to. She kissed him. It was impulsive, desperate, and real. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. After a moment of surprise, Daniel responded, his arms wrapping around her. Holding her like she was something precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara whispered, I don't want this to be fake anymore. Neither do I. Daniel's voice was rough. But Clara, that contract with Marcus doesn't matter. None of it matters except this. She cupped his face in her hands. I love you. I think I've been falling in love with you since the night you trusted me with the truth about Catherine. And I'm not leaving. Not for Marcus, not for my father, not for anyone, even if it means giving up your inheritance. Your family, I already gave them up 6 years ago. What I can't give up is you. Daniel kissed her again, slower this time. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. Then we make this real. Properly. Tomorrow, before Marcus can do anything, we get married. Actually married. Legal and binding. What about the contract? The arrangement? To hell with the contract. Daniel pulled her close. I want you as my wife. Not because of some business deal, but because I love you. Because you're the bravest, most remarkable person I've ever met. Because when I think about the future, I can't imagine it without you. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Yes. Yes, of course yes. They stood together in the sitting room where they'd maintained such careful distance for weeks. The boundary was gone now. The pretense shattered. What remained was real and terrifying and worth fighting for. The next morning, they gathered in the small church in town. Daniel, Clara, Grace, Thomas, Evelyn, Dr. Morrison, and Vivian. The pastor, confused but willing, performed a ceremony that was brief and legal and binding. when Daniel slipped the ring onto Clara's finger, his grandmother's ring, worn smooth by 2 generations of love, Clara felt something shift inside her chest. This was real. Whatever happened next, this was real. They emerged from the church to find Marcus waiting with 2 men who looked like hired muscle. "You can't do this," Marcus said, his composure cracking. "That marriage contract is void." A new voice cut through the cold morning air. Clara turned to see a man stepping down from a carriage, older, distinguished, with silver hair and eyes the same color as hers. "Father," she whispered. Benjamin Hartley walked toward them with slow, deliberate steps. He looked at Clara for a long moment, and she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not anger. "Regret, Mr. Pemberton," Benjamin said. "The marriage contract you're referencing was signed by a minor under duress. I've had 6 years to review the legality, and I can assure you, it wouldn't hold up in any court. You told me," Marcus started, "I told you where to find my daughter because I wanted to see her. Not to drag her back into an arrangement she never wanted." Benjamin turned to Clara. "I've been looking for you for 6 years. Not to force you home, but to apologize." Clara's throat tightened. "What? I was wrong. About the marriage, about putting the family reputation above your happiness. About everything." Benjamin's voice cracked. "I lost your mother because I was too proud to see what mattered. I won't lose you the same way. You disowned me. I was a fool. A proud, stubborn fool." Benjamin looked at Daniel. "Is this your husband?" "Your real husband?" "Yes," Clara said firmly. "Daniel Ashford. We married this morning." Benjamin studied Daniel with the assessing eye of a lawyer. "You love my daughter, more than anything, and you'll protect her. Stand by her. Give her the life I couldn't. I'll spend every day trying to deserve her." Benjamin nodded slowly. Then he turned to Marcus. "You have no claim here, Pemberton. Go back to Boston. Find someone who actually wants to marry you." Marcus looked between them, fury and disbelief warring on his face. "This isn't over. I'll sue. You'll lose." Benjamin's voice was steel. "I'm still a lawyer, and I'm still very good at what I do. Test me if you'd like." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then, without another word, he climbed into his carriage and left. Clara sagged against Daniel, relief washing through her in waves. "Thank you," she said to her father. Benjamin stepped closer. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I hope." He paused, struggling with emotion. "I hope you'll allow me to know you again. To be part of your life, if only on the margins." Clara looked at this man who'd hurt her so deeply, who'd driven her away, who'd spent 6 years searching for her not to control but to apologize. She thought about Catherine's journal. About the weight of regret. About the courage it took to admit when you were wrong. "Stay," she said quietly. "For a few days at least. Meet Daniel properly. See what I've built here." Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that very much." That afternoon, they held the public meeting. The territorial hall was packed. Ranchers, businessmen, families, everyone who'd ever lived under Harrison Blackwell's thumb. Judge Morrison presided, lending the proceedings official weight. Daniel stood before the crowd and told Catherine's story. Every detail. The accident that wasn't an accident. The cover-up. The 3 years of silence. Then Dr. Morrison took the stand and confessed everything. Then Vivian stepped forward with the box of documents. The room erupted in shock and anger as the evidence was presented. Not just Catherine's murder, but years of fraud, bribery, extortion. Harrison Blackwell's entire empire laid bare. Harrison himself tried to bluster, to deny, to use his influence to shut down the meeting. But Judge Morrison was unmoved. "Mr. Blackwell," the judge said, his voice carrying across the hall, "Based on the evidence presented here today, I'm issuing a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and corruption. You'll be held pending trial." The territorial sheriff stepped forward with handcuffs. Harrison's face went from red to white. He looked around the room, at the people he'd controlled, the families he'd manipulated, the daughter who'd betrayed him. "You'll all regret this," he spat. "Every one of you. I built this territory. Without me, you're nothing." "No," Clara said, surprising herself by speaking. "You built your empire on the backs of people you thought were too weak to fight back. But we're not weak. We're not nothing. And we're not afraid of you anymore." Harrison lunged toward her, but the sheriff caught him, wrestling him back. As they led him away in chains, the hall erupted in applause. Ranchers stood, shaking Daniel's hand. Women embraced Clara. Vivian stood to the side, tears streaming down her face, and Grace pulled her into a hug. Outside, Benjamin found Clara on the steps, looking out over the territory. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it. All of us." Clara turned to him. "Thank you for coming. For standing with us. I should have stood with you 6 years ago." Benjamin paused. "I have a proposal, if you're willing to hear it." "I'm listening." Harrison's legal troubles will be extensive. Untangling his business dealings, prosecuting his associates, redistributing ill-gotten assets. It's the kind of work that could take years and requires someone with both legal expertise and moral conviction. Benjamin met her eyes. "I'd like to offer my services. Pro bono. As penance for my past failures, and as a way to be part of something that matters." Clara felt warmth spreading through her chest. "Daniel is planning to organize the ranchers. Form an alliance to prevent anyone from having that kind of power again. Then I'll help with that too. Legal frameworks, bylaws, protections." Benjamin smiled slightly. "Your mother used to say I was at my best when I was fighting for people instead of prestige. Maybe it's time I proved her right. She'd like that." Clara took his hand. "I'd like that too." Over the next months, the alliance took shape. With Benjamin's legal expertise and Daniel's knowledge of ranching, they created a cooperative that ensured fair water rights, negotiated better prices with railroads and buyers, and protected small ranchers from exploitation. Vivian left Montana for San Francisco, where she opened a bookstore and began writing under a pen name about women's rights and social reform. She wrote to Clara regularly, her letters full of hope and healing. The trial of Harrison Blackwell became the biggest news in Montana territory. He was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 15 years in prison. His empire was dissolved, his assets seized and redistributed to his victims. Grace and Dr. Morrison compiled Catherine's story into a formal report that was published in Eastern newspapers, sparking conversations about justice and corruption across the country. And Clara and Daniel built a life together that was real in every sense. 1 year after that first disastrous engagement party, they stood in Catherine's garden, now expanded and thriving, with a memorial stone that read, "For those who were silenced. May they be remembered." Clara was 6 months pregnant. Daniel's hand rested on the gentle swell of her belly, his expression full of wonder and fear and hope. "Are you scared?" Clara asked, terrified. Daniel admitted. "After what happened to Catherine?" "I'm not Catherine. And you're not the same man you were then." Clara covered his hand with hers. "We'll face this together. Whatever happens, together," Daniel agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the plains. In the distance, they could see other ranches, part of the alliance they'd built. A community instead of a hierarchy. Cooperation instead of exploitation. "Do you ever regret it?" Daniel asked. "Staying that first night? Signing that contract?" Clara thought about the desperate seamstress who'd stepped off a stagecoach expecting simple alterations work. Who'd walked into a stranger's engagement party and had her entire life upended. who'd agreed to a lie because she had nowhere else to go. "Not for a second," she said. "Best mistake I ever made, not a mistake." Daniel turned her to face him. "Fate, you don't believe in fate, I didn't used to. But how else do you explain a woman showing up at exactly the right moment to save a man from making the worst decision of his life? Coincidence? Desperation? A misaddressed letter? Love," Daniel said simply. "In whatever form it takes to find us." He kissed her there in Catherine's garden, surrounded by growing things and the promise of spring. And Clara thought about all the twisted paths that had led her here, loss and running, lies and courage, a contract that became a promise. Sometimes the wrong place at the wrong time turned out to be exactly where you needed to be. 5 years later, Clara stood in the same garden with her daughter balanced on her hip. Margaret Catherine Ashford, 4 years old, with her father's dark hair and her mother's stubborn chin. "Mama, who's that lady?" Maggie asked, pointing at the memorial stone. "That's Catherine. She lived here before us. She loved these gardens. Did you know her?" "No, sweetheart. But I know she was brave and kind, and people loved her very much, like people love you." Clara smiled. Something like that. A carriage appeared on the drive, a familiar sight now. Benjamin visited regularly, his relationship with Clara rebuilt slowly, carefully, on a foundation of honesty instead of obligation. But today's carriage brought a different visitor, Vivian Blackwell. No, Vivian Chen, now married to a Chinese immigrant who ran a successful import business, stepped down with a small child of her own in her arms. Clara. Vivian's smile was genuine, warm, nothing like the calculating expression from that first encounter. "I hope we're not too early." Perfect timing. Clara embraced her with one arm, careful of the children. "Daniel's just finishing with the ranchers' meeting. He'll be thrilled to see you." They walked together toward the house, once a symbol of everything that separated them, now simply home. Maggie ran ahead, and Vivian's son toddled after her with the determination of an almost 2-year-old. "I heard about the latest expansion," Vivian said. "The alliance now covers 6 territories, 7 as of last month. Benjamin's been helping draft cooperative agreements. It's slow work, but it's spreading." Father would be horrified. "Good." They shared a look, 2 women who'd been enemies, then allies, now friends. United by shared trauma and the hard-won understanding that sometimes the greatest strength came from choosing to be vulnerable. That evening, they gathered around the dinner table, Daniel and Clara, Maggie, Benjamin, Vivian and her family, Grace and Thomas and their 3 children, Evelyn presiding at one end with the satisfaction of a woman who'd seen her family grow despite every obstacle. "A toast," Benjamin said, raising his glass. "To improbable beginnings and hard-won endings. To family," Evelyn added. "However it's formed. To courage," Vivian said quietly. "To love," Daniel said, his eyes finding Clara's across the table. In all its unexpected forms, Clara raised her glass, looking around at these people who'd become her family through choice rather than blood. She thought about the contract she'd signed 5 years ago, the careful boundaries she'd drawn, the promise to keep emotions separate from business. She thought about how thoroughly she'd broken every rule, and she was grateful for it. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Maggie was asleep, Clara found Daniel in his study, going over alliance papers by lamplight. "Come to bed," she said from the doorway. He looked up, and that familiar warmth spread through her chest at the sight of him, still weathered, still tired from the weight of responsibility, but no longer carrying it alone. "In a minute. I just need to finish." Clara crossed the room and plucked the pen from his hand. "The papers will be there tomorrow." "I won't." Dramatic, effective. Daniel laughed and let her pull him to his feet. They climbed the stairs together, past the children's rooms and Evelyn's suite, to the east bedroom that was no longer just Clara's but theirs. "Do you remember the first night I slept here?" Clara asked. "Sitting on the edge of the bed. I was convinced I'd made a terrible mistake." "Did you? The best kind." She pulled him down beside her. "The kind that changes everything." Daniel kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. "I love you, Mrs. Ashford, I love you too." Clara smiled. "Even if you did lie to an entire room of people to trap me into marrying you," trap is such an ugly word, manipulate, deceive, scheme, rescue. "I prefer rescue, is that what you were doing?" "Rescuing me?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, his expression turning serious. "No. You rescued yourself. You'd already run from a life you didn't want. Made hard choices. Survived on your own terms. All I did was give you a place to land." "We rescued each other," Clara said softly. "You from a marriage that would have destroyed you. Me from a past that would have consumed me. And together we built something neither of us could have built alone, the alliance, the family, this," he gestured around the room, their life, their shared space that represented everything they'd fought for. Clara leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Outside, snow was beginning to fall again, covering Montana in white. But inside was warmth and safety and the kind of love that came from truly seeing someone and choosing them anyway. "Do you think Catherine would approve?" Clara asked. "Of us, of all this?" "I think she'd be happy I finally stopped punishing myself." Daniel's voice was soft. "And I think she'd like you very much. You're both stubborn enough to change the world when you decide it's wrong." Clara smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall outside their window. And Clara thought about the girl who'd arrived in Montana with nothing but a carpetbag and borrowed dreams. Who'd walked into the wrong house at the wrong time and found exactly what she'd been searching for without knowing she was searching at all. Some lies were born from desperation, some were born from hope, the best ones were born from love and turned into truth despite themselves. Clara had started as a stranger in this house, wearing borrowed clothes and a borrowed name, playing a role that wasn't hers. But somewhere along the way, between Catherine's garden and Daniel's grief, between Harrison's threats and Vivian's redemption, between contracts and courage, she'd become exactly who she was always meant to be, not Mrs. Ashford the seamstress, not Clara Hartley the runaway daughter, just Clara. Wife, mother, friend, fighter. A woman who'd learned that the greatest strength wasn't in never falling, but in choosing who to stand up with, and she'd chosen well. If this story of courage, second chances, and unexpected love moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more cinematic stories every week. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever walked into the wrong place at the right time? Have you ever made a choice that changed everything? We love hearing from you. Thank you for joining us on Clara and Daniel's journey. Until next time, may you have the courage to choose love over fear and truth over convenience. Remember, sometimes the greatest lies become the most honest truths.